Hello, everybody. Welcome to Breakfast All Day. Christy, Alonso.
Hi, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's 2020. This is 2020.
This is 2020.
Yes, that has been all over everything. Various versions of Barbara Walters saying that. It is a brand new year.
It is indeed.
And so because it's early January, it is like notoriously a terrible, terrible time for new movies. So we're not talking about any new movies today.
Yes. We'll get to, there were a couple of year-end, it's on two screens to qualify for Oscars, and then it's going to open wider later. And when later happens, we're going to get caught up on some things. But yeah, this would be the perfect time to sort of look back and talk about our favorite films of 2019.
Yes. So we'll do a best of, and then separately we'll do a worst of.
Yes.
Despite the fact that now those are unfashionable. There's like a backlash to the worst of list notion now. I don't know.
No.
Well, we'll talk about that when we get to that part, but we're talking about our best of it first. How do you want to do this? Do you want to each pick our number one and then go down from there?
Well, I think we should make them wait for our number one. How about we each do our 10 through 6, then our 5 through 2, and then our 1s.
Okay, I need to remember what order I put my things in. So I'm going to just do a bunch down at the bottom. One of them is The Lighthouse.
Okay.
Which I don't think you love the way I did.
I didn't, but I mean, I like it. I respect it. I get why people dig it. It just didn't speak to me in that way. But I bet I'll see it again down the line and be like, oh yeah, that movie's amazing.
Just strange and gripping and constantly surprising. And I'm of course a sucker for that kind of really rich, gorgeous black and white cinematography.
Sure. It is exactly the movie that it wants to be.
And that's a success, is it not? I mean, I think that's a lot of what we judge movies on is how successfully do you do what you do for your target audience?
Exactly. Where are you aiming and where are you hitting? I'm always saying is a big thing for this stuff. And yeah, this movie has this very kind of eccentric point of view, but and an odd way of getting there. But it is tonally and visually doing exactly what it's setting out to do.
Yes, this is not my number 10, by the way. This is somewhere down in the mishmash of the second half. I can't remember how I listed them.
Fair enough.
What's yours?
My number 10 is High Life.
Oh, yes.
And the other Robert Pattinson movie.
Yes, we have a couple this year, both strange.
Yes, yeah. This was a movie that was off-putting in a lot of ways, but again, I think all in the intentional ways. I don't love Claire Denis the way my husband does.
I was going to say, Dave loves Claire Denis.
He's a huge, huge fan. He dragged me to see Beau Travail, and I was not into it, really.
Interesting.
But I did love High Life. And I think it is... For people who talk about sort of hard sci-fi, I think that, this is a movie that... Okay, maybe not hard sci-fi. That's, I think, a whole other category that I'm probably not prepared to talk about. But I'd say for people who are interested in the idea of science fiction using notions of the future to talk about the present, it's doing a very good job.
And if you are willing to stick with it, you know, its pace is very deliberate and potentially off-putting. Yeah. But if you stick with it, it's just mesmerizing, and so many weird, unexpected things happen that it keeps you wanting to know what could possibly happen next.
It's more Solaris than Star Wars, certainly.
Yes. Okay, so I will then do another one from somewhere down there. Give Me Liberty.
One I did not get to see this year, but I've heard very good things.
I love it. It is about this guy who is a Russian immigrant, family of immigrants living in Milwaukee, and it takes place all over the course of a day in his life. And he is driver of this van that takes disabled people from point A to point B. And so that's part of his day. And then also he has this giant Russian family, and they have to get to a funeral, and they have no way to get there. So they all insist on cramming into his van while he's also running all of his errands and all of his stops. And he's constantly late, and the phone's ringing. We talk about how movies like Uncut Gems are like cinema of anxiety. And this completely is, because you were on edge the whole time. You feel like you were in that van, whether you want to be or not. Right. And Kirill Mikhanovsky, who directed it and wrote it, a lot of it's inspired by his own life. And it's got a lot of non-actors and real people who are disabled, and it never treats them in a way that's mawkish or condescending. It's this miracle of a film. It's like riding this line of farce and realism, and it's funny and it's sad. It's so low budget. So if Give Me Liberty is anywhere near you, it's thrilling. Go check it out.
Sold. I will check it out. Yes. My number 9 was Her Smell.
Oh, a tour de force.
Yes.
From Elizabeth Moss.
Yes. I mean, I'm a fan of Alex Ross Perry for the most part. I'm going to say that Christopher Robin, or whatever that movie was called,
Yeah.
was more Disney's fault than his.
That was weird.
But I think his films as an auteur, I think he has a fascinating point of view. I like the way that he tells stories. And this is like the second or third time that he's worked with Elizabeth Moss. And I think he is, the two of them together have created some really interesting stuff, and never more so than this film, where she's giving you this character that could have very easily just sort of been like a kind of Courtney Love caricature of, unhinged, rock goddess, just destroying everything around her. And she finds so many levels of that character. And the movie takes her on such a journey, toward an idea of redemption, which is not something that you would get in a lot of earlier Alex Ross Perry movies. And then I think all the other characters are so fascinating as well, like the her bandmates, and then like the young band that she sort of tries to kind of glom onto that really doesn't need her mentorship, and her mother, played by Virginia Madsen, and just so much of this movie I think is just so smart and such a gut punch. And like the scene of Elizabeth Moss just sitting at the piano and playing a song for her child is just one of the great moments of the year.
So moving. And it's a really showy role, and it's a great reminder of just how much Elizabeth Moss can do. Because you see her in something like Handmaid's Tale, and you recognize or like it being Peggy on Mad Men, you realize like the understated, contained power that she can provide in a performance. And here she gets to just go nuts.
Yeah,
and
the brakes are off.
Yeah, and it's exciting in a different way. So I dug this one too.
Cool.
Let's see. Another one down at the bottom. What else is down there? Oh, Honeyland is an amazing documentary. I think the documentary of the year. Have you seen Honeyland?
I need to.
Okay, so if I don't know if we've talked about it elsewhere, but
I think you guys
maybe
reviewed
Matt
it.
and I did.
Y'all reviewed it, yeah.
This is the documentary about Macedonian beekeepers that you never knew you needed in your life. And it is gorgeously shot. You completely forget from the very beginning that you're watching a documentary, and yet you are also just dazzled by the camera work because it's so immersive in following this woman who's done these, centuries old methods of beekeeping and honey harvesting, and you're walking with her like along these really narrow little treacherous ridges along a mountain and thinking like how did they get that shot? And they spent years with her, and they truly make you feel like you are a part of her life. And it's gorgeously shot, like the way they use low lighting inside the little hut she lives in with her mom. And anyway, it's gorgeous and thrilling. And Honeyland, I think it's on a lot of people's lists for like a documentary nominee.
And it's on the Oscar shortlist too, I think.
So go find that.
Yeah, I will definitely check that out. My number 8 was Booksmart.
Oh, Booksmart. I love that movie. It was on my list for a while, then I had to pare down things. So yes, Booksmart's up there for me too.
Yeah, I remember just having such movie-going pleasure watching that movie, in terms of just how witty it was and how much I enjoyed the characters and how much there was there were moments that were so super recognizable, and then other moments that were just borderline absurdist, but not so much that it would break the spell of the film. They somehow made it organic. I just, it's such a wonderfully assured directorial debut from Olivia Wilde. I really want to see what she does next.
Yeah, and Beanie Feldstein and Caitlin Dever have such lovely, really true chemistry with each other. But even like as we talked about when we reviewed it, like every supporting role is cast so perfectly, and each person, like Billy Lord, Skylar Gisondo, they all get time to shine. Jessica Williams as their teacher is really great. So yeah, I like that one quite a bit as well. I will stick with documentaries here down in my second half and go with Apollo 11.
Oh, great.
Which keeps showing up in theaters. They keep re-releasing it. So yay, go see it in a theater if you can, because
if you can see it in IMAX, go for it.
I know it was on CNN, but truly this is something you must experience and be immersed in, because I mean, you truly feel like you are part of the moon launch and landing and all that, and you forget things like, oh, they had to get back. They had to get back from space. Like, I forgot that. Michael Collins is out there orbiting, just waiting to come hook up with them, and the sound design. Yeah. And I just love the structure of it, where there are no talking heads explaining to you why the moon landing matters.
Right, exactly.
It's all this, and it's edited beautifully.
In the moment, yeah. It's a great double feature with For All Mankind.
And First Man.
I was saying First Man, and even if you're like sort of fried on astronaut movies between First Man and Ad Astra and whatever, like no, this is riveting stuff.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this when we reviewed it originally. Like, it makes me appreciate the care that Damien Chazelle put into all of the details of First Man to see this, legitimate archival footage, and
It's very much of a piece.
Yeah. So Apollo 11.
My number 7 was, I don't know if you saw this one, Jafar Panahi's Three Faces.
I did not.
Beautiful film.
Okay.
Jafar Panahi under house arrest in
Yep,
Iran
still
and
making
still
movies.
making movies. So good on you, sir. This one, he and a leading Iranian actress, sort of playing themselves, travel to this small village because this young woman has posted a video to the internet saying that she wants to be an actress, but her family won't allow her. And it would appear that she has committed suicide on this video. So they come to the town to like find her, to find out what the deal was, and they of course uncover something that's completely unexpected, and then also have to kind of come face to face with these sort of small town attitudes about entertainers, I think is the word they use, because this is sort of considered a, I don't know if this is like necessarily an Islamic thing or specifically to the country or whatever, but people who are in the show business are sort of thought of as like,
because it's crude.
Immoral. It's immoral, exactly. Yeah, it's sort of like you would always hear about, like the way actors used to be treated in this country before we started putting them on
Worshipping
pedestals.
them.
Yeah.
Wait, so this is not a documentary. It's
not a documentary, but he's, like I said, he and this other actress are sort of playing themselves, and it's shot in the way that he does stuff, which feels very, because again, he's making these movies on the sly, so like they're very handheld. I'm sure like a crew of 2 people or something.
I was gonna say, how did he get out to even make it?
I would love to know,
because this is not a film. The whole point of it is that he made it in his apartment and he couldn't call it a film.
Yeah, I think he can leave the house now, because if you saw Jafar Panahi's Taxi, he's at least driving around Tehran.
Interesting.
And so now he's going out into the boonies a bit. Anyway, great movie. Always kept me guessing. Really terrific performances.
Good. Okay, so what else can I give you? Let's see, 1, 2,
number
3.
6?
I don't even know. They're not numbered at this point. Let's go with Midsommar.
Ooh, okay.
Which I don't think you love like I love.
I want to see the director's cut. Actually,
I have not seen the director's cut,
because it's one of those movies where, even though I felt like the theatrical cut had pacing issues, I think that if it were longer, it might not, which sounds like a contradiction, but I think sometimes you get to sort of flesh out some things. I don't love it the way you do, but I do like it a lot. I definitely admire a lot of what it's doing.
Because the original Midsommar is like a good solid 2 hours and 40 minutes, is it not?
Yeah.
So how much longer is the director's cut?
I think like another half hour or something.
Again, there's definitely a theme with a lot of the movies I chose here. They're about being on edge. They're about and not that I'm on edge. I'm not. All is well with me. But like a lot of the movies,
you have to go to the movie to get anxiety because you're not getting it in real life.
The catharsis of it. Yeah, but a lot of the movies I chose and are choosing, like I am choosing rather. I like verbs. They are about working through something. And I don't know whether that's like a reflection of the world in which we currently live, but like, Midsommar you could look at as a breakup movie. Midsommar you could look at as a movie exploring paranoia and isolation and how you grieve. I was so impressed by the giant tonal shifts and the big swings he takes here, Ari Aster, and Florence Pugh goes through the ringer, but it's not gratuitous. It truly feels like an exploration of this woman's grief and trying to figure out her place in the world where everything seems mad. It's beautiful, and I love the way it's shot and edited, and so that is a good one.
No, there's a lot to love there for sure.
Okay.
My number 6 was Marriage Story.
Oh, so beautifully written, so beautifully acted.
Yeah, so it's funny because I didn't think of that being one of the sort of anxiety movies of this year, but I was in the room when Dave started watching it on Netflix, and once like they start getting into like we're about to go to court stuff, I was like I had to leave the room. I wasn't in a space to like go through that again because I know how much of a ringer all those characters get put through,
and the fight's coming.
Exactly, all that stuff. Yeah. Which is, and it's all great, and I loved it, and that's why it's one of my 10 favorite films of the year. But I just like I knowing that it was coming, and I just wasn't in the headspace for it. But like that movie's, I think, really smart and really intense, and I think he does a fairly fair-handed job of not taking sides in this. And there are people who disagree with me, and I think one of the things about art is we can all come away with it with different, viewpoints. But for me, it felt like there was a real sense of balance going on, and that even scenes in which, Adam Driver's character is sort of presenting things as though they're completely logical, you can still be like, that makes no sense at all. But you're just rationalizing things.
I also agree that both it's a balanced portrayal of where each of them believes the relationship is, right?
Yes.
If you're looking at through their perspective, each of them thinks they're right. Each of them thinks that they have legitimate reasons for upending the marriage and standing their ground and insisting that this is where we have to live and this is what we have to do. It's speaking of supporting casts where like everyone down the line is just perfectly chosen. This is very true here.
Merritt Wever,
Alan Alda, Laura
Julie
Dern.
Hagerty, Ray Liotta.
It's great.
Yes.
And I love the fact that it's one of the many movies that has made Sondheim hot. And I like that the fight scene has become a meme with like a 4-panel meme of the two of them yelling at each other. That's kind of funny that like this is now like a mainstream thing and everyone knows what this means.
There was I can't remember if it was Mark Harris or somebody made the observation on Twitter that as much as some people might gripe about Netflix and what they're doing with theatrical distribution and blah blah blah, the idea that The Irishman and Marriage Story were so discussed on Twitter as adult dramas, like, means that people were seeing them and talking about them. And, the lament you always hear from studios is that, nobody talks about adult dramas. We can't get people to leave their house to see them. We can't make them part of the conversation. And, certainly, unless it's awards talk or whatever. So that, I think, kind of the fact that it's being memed means that it's getting out into the world in the way that it might not have if it had opened on like 3 screens in New York and LA and expanded from there.
Say what you will. Yes.
Yeah.
Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Nice.
This is a movie we're going to talk about later on
Valentine's
this year.
Day.
It's coming out Valentine's Day. I think it had a quick little Oscar qualifying run in New York and LA. It is breathtakingly beautiful.
That is one that I put as a runner-up, and I suspect like that's the one that is probably, after I see it again, is going to climb up my regard, because it's an amazing movie.
And it's so subtle in the way it depicts the relationship between these two women. And of course, we'll go far more in depth when we actually review it. But like, it kind of sneaks up on you, and you realize like, oh, of course, it built from the very first second that they saw each other. This thing, and like the slow burn of it is so sexy and so dramatic and so intense. And just again, every single shot is like an exquisite piece of art that you'd want to hang in your house.
And the paintings themselves in this movie are so great, because nothing takes me out of a movie faster than like a crappy fake newspaper, where the headline fonts are wrong,
or
whatever.
like the website is off.
Yeah. Or like a staged family photo that was put together clearly with Photoshop or whatever. But like somebody made the effort to really make those paintings feel, because the paintings are part of the plot. I'm not going to say they're a character in the film, but they are part of the plot. And they say so much about what the artist is thinking and her perceptions of stuff, and they nail it.
Yeah, they're a reflection of the relationship between the two as well.
Absolutely.
So that's all true, and we'll talk about it more next month.
My number 5 is Diane.
Oh, Mary Kay Place, our LA Film Critics winner for Best Actress. That was a great moment in our voting.
Yes. I love it when we do that kind of thing. This is, yes, Mary Kay Place's performance, one for the ages, but I think just in general, like, this is such a smart movie about, a woman's inner life and about dealing with the past, and how wherever a person is at the moment is so much just kind of the surface of all the things they are, and you uncover so much about this woman and so much about how she's been in people's lives and what her influence on other people has been, that you wouldn't necessarily just like glom onto in the first 10 minutes of just seeing how she spends her day-to-day life. It was just so rich, and I thought the sense of place, that whole sort of like, frigid kind of upstate New York, kind of slate grayness of everything was so great. And then like, another great supporting cast, Jake Lacey, Andrea Martin, all these amazing people. I love this movie.
I like the fact that there is great kindness for this character, but there's not condescension toward her, right?
No.
It's willing to look at her in all of her complexities, and it's willing to challenge your notions of her as it goes along. And I like the credit that it gives us for being able to like look at a woman, a middle-aged woman, and all of her glory and her flaws, and appreciate them all as a piece.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's rare in film.
True.
And it's, again, like, it's not like a reach out and grab you kind of movie. It's like a quiet little understated indie, but it does sneak up on you.
And I believe it is currently on Hulu and Amazon. If you missed it, which you very well did, so check it out.
Okay, so this now might be my number 4. I think we are now we're doing it 4 now,
Yes,
right?
we're
Okay.
4.
Okay, so I'm gonna say Little Women at 4.
Okay.
All right. It's very. I mean, again, when we do these, like, what's 4, 5, and 6? Like, it could be 1 tomorrow.
Sure.
It just depends on what kind of mood you're in. We talked about Little Women just this past week on the podcast, so we can go back and look for that. But it's just delightful. It is joy. It is beauty. It is inspiring and heartbreaking, and a true thrilling experience to see something that you think interpreted in such a new and exciting way.
Yeah, it answers the question, did we need another adaptation of Little Women? With yes, we did, as it turns out.
And I love the idea of that, like, we can only have X number of Little Women adaptations in our lives.
But please, more Hamlets. My number 4 is Parasite.
Okay.
Yeah. Which we've also talked about.
Yes.
I just, this is a movie that I think about a lot. And, I think says so much without telling you it's saying it, I guess is a way to say it. Like, it's not sort of underscoring and jabbing you in the shoulder with what it has to say, but it is saying so much about the world as it is right now. And, and there is, I think, there is still that segment of the audience like subtitles, or just the thought that, like, foreign films are going to be foreign in every way, and they aren't going to be relatable to people who don't live in South Korea. And, like, no, this is a completely relatable movie wherever you live. I think it has a lot to say about just how life works right now.
But also, isn't the whole point of film to sometimes expose you to kinds of life that you don't relate to?
Ideally, yes.
Maybe.
I'm for that.
I love Parasite. We talked about it a lot. That's all I'm going to say for right now.
Okay.
Okay. Number 3 is Uncut Gems.
Okay.
More of my stressed out movies here.
You
Right,
are
I'm
chill.
right on the edge.
You are so chill if you need to go to the movies for this stuff.
I know. It's just, speaking of making the exact kind of movie that you want to make. I mean, the plate splitting, the way in which they juggle all of these different facets of this character's life and all the people and all the. It's incessant, and it puts you right in the middle of it, whether you want to be there or not. And the sound design is tremendous, and it is Adam Sandler's best work ever. And again, with a tremendous supporting cast between Idina Menzel and Lakeith Stanfield and Kevin Garnett, just being Kevin Garnett.
Eric Bogosian
gets to be in it. And
Judd Hirsch.
Judd Hirsch is very good in it. And it is so rich in its sense of place. It is so specific in this kind of life, and it is so exciting to see this character who, like, he's not a good guy. He's not a nice guy. You don't feel for him, but you kind of find yourself rooting for him to get away with it all. And that's really hard to pull off.
Absolutely. My number 3 is The Irishman.
Okay.
I was thinking, because, yesterday was January 1st, 2020, TCM showed The Roaring Twenties, which is one of my favorite old gangster movies. And it just reminded me about how, like, when you look back at the classic gangster movies, how they get gunned down in their prime, and that was supposed to be the ending that proved to the Hayes office that you weren't glorifying a life of crime and that this is where it all ended up.
There are consequences.
And boy, I think it's even more powerful to have the consequences be that you wind up like Robert De Niro in The Irishman, where you are, like, old and alone, and your family doesn't want to talk to you, and nobody comes visit you at the old folks home, or you're Joe Pesci, like in serving a life sentence and gumming down, like, bread soaked in grape juice. Like, it just.
You kept the secrets, and for what?
Exactly. Yeah. So I just think this is a really sort of devastating examination of the the fruits of crime, but not in the way that we're used to seeing them in movies.
Yes. Well, my number 2 is The Irishman.
Okay.
So there you go. And we were talking a second ago about movies that people saw on Netflix that perhaps they wouldn't have otherwise. I can't think of a single person that I ran into all during the holidays or over the last couple of months who didn't have something to say about The Irishman. Like, they'd watched it, they either were riveted by it, they couldn't get through it, it's too long. I watched it at home and did laundry. I watched it at home in half an hour chunks. Like, but they saw it.
Exactly.
And it is a really lovely sort of culmination of all that these guys can do so well. And I do wish people had seen it more on the big screen, because part of the thrill of it is the way it's edited, and just the production design. And I feel like perhaps you can get all of that more powerfully on a big screen, but people are seeing it. And
I saw it both ways,
and
it still works on the
Okay.
small screen. Yeah, obviously, I think anything looks bigger on the big screen.
Right.
Like, if you go to there are movie theaters where they just show the Super Bowl if you want to go do that, and like they they don't charge you admission, but they just sell you popcorn and nachos or whatever. Like, everything looks bigger, bigger, bigger. But I think I remember how when Titanic came out, and there were all these sort of these magazine pieces about how James Cameron very knowingly shot for the big screen, but also with a mind of what TVs used to be like back then, and how like not everything was released letterboxed. So they had these sort of like dotted lines showing like, if you watch the movie letterboxed or you watch it in theater, you got this shot. But if you're watching it pan and scan, he still gives you this. Like, he thought about that the whole time. And I think that Scorsese, knowing that Netflix was, underwriting this movie, knew that most people were going to see it on the small screen. And I think he and is it Rodrigo Prieto who shot it?
yes.
I think they had that in mind, and so it still looks great.
Yeah, and it's exciting to see at this stage in Scorsese's career that he is interested in and excited about technology, like, anti-aging
Sure.
technology. And this is the best de-aging I've ever seen.
Absolutely.
And it's not a gimmick. It is useful for the storytelling. So that's my number 2. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is Pain and Glory.
Okay. Oh, I'm shocked to hear that.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what your number 1 is. Yeah, okay.
You know.
Okay. So
Yes,
good.
I think this is one of Almodovar's best films. I think it calls up so much about, again, like The Irishman, it is so much about like aging and regret, and about the choices we make, and where do they lead us, and where do we wind up, and what do we do to sort of change that if we can. This is it's on the one hand very autobiographical, but on the other hand, like, it's about a blocked director, which Almodovar I don't think has ever been. Like, he's very prolific. I got to interview him this year, and he talked about how this movie was about his fear of being physically unable to make movies, and how he wouldn't know what to do with himself if he ever reached that point.
Why would he? Oh, I mean, in terms of like age, or
just actual physicality,
yeah,
like
okay.
infirmity, like not being able to, like, because directing is strenuous. Like, we even talked about that famous picture of like John Huston directing The Dead, like, and he's in a wheelchair and he's like attached to God knows how many like machines and tubes, and he was like, oh yeah, I almost included that picture in the movie. Like, that's a real image of strength for me, But yeah, I just, Antonio Banderas' best performance, no question. Really great work from both. His mother is played in various times by Penelope Cruz and Julieta Serrano, who both worked with him a lot. Just gorgeous filmmaking.
It feels very personal, of course, but I think anybody can relate to the idea of, as you say, trying to stay vital.
Yeah.
And trying to be creative. Cuando hablas con él, hablas en español o inglés?
En español.
Oh, muy bien. And also, you get to introduce him at our LA Film Critics Dinner,
Yes.
which we'll talk about. If you're on our Patreon, we're going to talk about some awards season stuff, including our LAFCA awards.
Indeed.
And who we get to present to.
Yeah, no, I've interviewed him like 6 times, and the first time I had a translator, and within about 5 minutes, I was like, no, I got this.
I mean, were you concerned that it would be too fast?
I was, but it turns out like I can understand him just fine, and I can sort of choke out my sentences in my crap Spanish well enough for him to know what I'm talking about. So, it works out.
There you go. My number 1 is Parasite.
Okay.
Which I love, and I want to see it again. And it's Director Bong is a master of these tonal shifts, and it's so many different kinds of movie, and it is saying so much, so entertainingly, so horrifyingly about the current economic condition, about family, about striving. But it's it's a dark comedy. It's a satire about economic disparity, and then it is a drama, and then it's like a straight up horror movie, and you are just gripped. It's gorgeous. I want to live in that house. I know people say the house is a character. The house is a character. The house is crucial. What happens inside the house? Dave's home. Hi, Dave. We're talking about Parasite. How great Parasite is. Cool, says Dave. So Melanie Linsky had a great tweet about, You guys, why are people not talking about the Parasite cast for acting honors? Like, clearly someone there is going to get an Oscar nomination, right? And Song Kang-ho is our LA Film Critics winner for Best Supporting Actor.
Yes.
But there are so many great performances in that. And
Absolutely.
anyway, I loved it.
Yeah, no, I hope they get some traction on that, because that movie I think is burning up award season. So I hope they share the wealth for sure. My number one is Little Women, as I said last
Yay.
week. It's my favorite film of the year. Yeah, I just think that it is. It is smart, and it's moving, and it's contemporary, and it's classical, and it is has a lot of ideas, but it's also like a visceral experience of just cozy beauty and warmth, Yeah, I adore this film.
The Alexandre Desplat score is perhaps his best ever. It's just lovely and transporting. And
Yes.
of course, Saoirse Ronan's always great, but like Florence Pugh really steals a lot of this because Amy's written in a much more human way.
Yes, all four sisters get a lot more real estate to like be characters and have things to say and for us to understand who they are. And yeah, it's I just realized Yorick Lasalle shot my number 1 and my number 10, and they couldn't be two more different films, High Life and Little Women.
Those are very different movies.
Wow. Yeah. So that's some eclectic work right there. Yeah. So that's our top 10. My runners up, or if you look at my list on TheWrap, I have like an 11 through 20.
Okay. Any ones you want to just throw out the names of? That you can recall?
Long Shot. I wish more people had seen Long Shot.
Oh, Long Shot's fun.
I'm totally blanking, but it's
I
all
put
online.
you on the spot. Go look online, and let us know what you guys love this year as
Yes.
well. If you have seen these, if you have thoughts on films you loved, please tell us.
By all means. Thanks for watching. Like this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel here on YouTube. Follow us on social media at BeFastAllDay on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. We're going to be talking about awards movies, or rather the coming awards season. We've got the Golden Globes coming up this weekend. We are getting ready to review a whole new mess of TV shows. But if you want to go back and see our recaps for Watchmen and His Dark Materials Season 1 and The Morning Show and all that, they're all there on our Patreon page. So yeah, Happy New Year. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.